moving along in this calendar year, maybe it will be a comfort to you to know that 34% of us in this room are right on target. Right on target with falling off the wagon of our New Year's resolutions. For those of us who even made them. And statistically, apparently, less than half of us do. But those of us who do are concerned with some particularly interesting topics, and I thought we'd look at the 34% and what we might have had on our minds for at least 30 days. This is a top 10 list of things that are the most important New Year's resolutions that we make here in our Western culture. We'd like more time with our family. Some of us would like more romance. We might be concerned with helping others, of being in sacred service in our community here or in our community at large. We'd like to quit smoking if that's something that has been present in our lives. We'd love to learn something new and exciting. And we're interested in staying fit and healthy. We'd like to enjoy life more, have more vibrancy, more vitality. We're concerned about financial balance, whether we want to spend less and save more. And we might be concerned about getting organized. Now, nobody who's been in my office would think that'd be on my list. What do you think the number one New Year's resolution is? Go to church. I like that idea, but wrong. Statistically wrong. Oh, yeah, losing weight. There are some who are not willing to be Rubenesque, and that would be their main concern. But whatever it is, statistically, we don't hold our New Year's resolutions. There are a couple of chief reasons for this. One, we find out just how much time it takes to be committed to something we'd like to have come into our life. And two, we just didn't realize it was going to be that hard, folks. Whatever it was, we didn't know it was going to be that hard. So we tend to just, put the blinders on and forget that was what we said at the first of the year. I'd like us to entertain the possibility that we hold the spiritual power to move our resolutions into actuality, to not just let them go fallow about February 2nd or whatever. And from the wisdom of the Hindu scriptures, the Vedanta, also known as the Upanishads, comes this wisdom. You are what your deepest desire is. As your desire is, so is your intention. As your intention is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. And as your deed is, so is your destiny. Isn't that a lovely progression? Beginning with the deepest desires of our hearts. Whether that's in this moment, a team that gathers on Sunday morning has a desire to bring inspiration and spiritual knowledge to the room today, to be uplifting and bringing joy into our experience as we begin the week. Or whether your deepest desire is some far-off goal that you know you want it, you know you're called to it, and you haven't a clue how you'll get there. But that desire is the beginning of the journey. And as your desire is, then follows your intention. Now, this is a powerful aspect of the equation. Much more than a resolution, an intention tends to draw the energy from us, within us, and acquiring the energy that breathes and moves in the universe so that we can be carried forward to that intention. And it requires our will. It requires our focus. It requires our full-hearted presence to this idea. And our will then guides our deeds, our actions. You remember that our fifth unity principle is action is essential. I have a huge spiritual library, and if all it ever did was rest on the shelves or sit on my nightstand or even get read past those words through my eyes, if I don't live those truths that I have acquired, then it might as well sat on the shelf or even stayed in the bookstore. But action is the process of moving ourselves forward, and that action carries us to our destiny. Now, sometimes those of us having been raised in traditional churches in our Western culture, we can kind of get hung up on a word or two in here. Anybody struggling with destiny or will? when you had interpretations from your youthful theological training. Let's see how we look at those in unity, because they have so much power for us in the journey. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of the Unity Movement, put together a book called The Revealing Word, which was an assembly of his understanding of the theological terms that we use, trying to understand our tenets, our doctrine, our teachings. And Charles says, destiny is the goal toward which man's own thoughts are leading him. Now, I always forgive Charles that he only spoke in the masculine voice. He meant all of us. But that destiny is where my thoughts are carrying me. There's not some book written in the sky that's scribed by the God of the white beard sitting in the large chair that tells the story of my life. My life's destiny is of my own design. It's called forth from my soul. There is some seed, I believe, planted there that guides me at the beginning. And then the journey is made up of my choices and actions and responses and reaction and creation in every next moment of the journey. And the will is simply my force of understanding, of moving forward, of being determined to follow this goal I have set for myself. It's not will imposed on me, it's will I choose. My determination, my ability to stay focused on my desires. In Scripture we find the wisdom of Job. You will decide on a matter and it will be established for you, and the light will shine on your ways. When we decide what our desires are, and we implement our will to take action, to follow, no matter what the obstacles, listening for guidance at every step, then the light of God's love will shine on the path. The light of God's wisdom will shine in your mind, giving you guidance for the next step. The resources you need will come in a phone call, in a song you hear, in the magazine you're reading. Something will spark your own divine ideas. For that's how we create. God did not plunk down the universe and the world especially, and everything we see in it. God created through the creative use of ideas. In Unity, we call these divine ideas. Come to Metaphysics 1.2, and we'll talk about some of this on Monday afternoon. But we create through the power of our mind. So we are this image and likeness of God, and so as God creates, so also do we. We open our mind with the ideas that inspire and call us, and then we move toward those ideas with our will, taking action as we are guided. The light will shine on your ways when you make up your mind. You create in your mind, and you follow it with your heart. In Unity, what we know to be true, that life is consciousness. So if God didn't create everything that we see, how does that occur? In spiritual and metaphysical terms, we understand that the energy of God was utilized to form all that we see physically manifest. And when we connect with that energy of God, that fires up our own creative capacity. The universe is movement of energy and information, says Deepak Chopra. We're swimming in this field, this matrix of pure potentiality. Good Chopra words, pure potentiality. I love that. It is so juicy. I want to swim in that all the time. And the truth is, we are. We are in this field of this energy and information, and we have access to it through creative ideas, through inspiration, to interpret and shape them as we would like. Intention and desire in the field of pure potentiality have infinite organizing power, Deepak Chopra tells us. So that we're in this soup of creative energy and information, and all that we desire is available to us. Here's a good analogy. Play computer games? I don't, but my daughter and grandchildren are learning them. And you know how a computer game works? Every possibility is programmed in that computer. So it doesn't matter what choice you take, what your character does, what key you hit. It just plays out for you in the infinite possibilities of that game environment. Now, metaphors are always limited, and I don't know about computer games and how expansive they are, but I know the universe is absolutely unlimited, and I'm metaphorically playing the game of life. And so whatever choice I make just simply unfolds the next aspect of my game of life in front of me, and the next action sends me off in this direction. And so I am in this constant process of creating and reacting to that, and creating and reacting to that, just like the workings of a computer game. It really is more simple than we oftentimes believe. So if the idea, go learn a computer game, and then you'll know how simple this is. I'm going to spend time with my daughter and son-in-law soon. I may actually ask him to give me some training because I'm a hands-on learner. But how do we begin? How do we move from this aspect of resolutions that we might fall apart in by February 2nd to a firmly called forth desire of our heart and focused intention to move forward in that journey? First, we have to identify what we do desire. What is it that we want? Either in this next moment, like I'm going to sit down to a really nice brunch late this afternoon because my favorite meal is breakfast food. I just want it at about noon or later. So believe me, I know all the restaurants in town that serve breakfast all day long. And so my deep desire on every Sunday morning is the breakfast that's going to come at about 2 o'clock or later in the afternoon. And I propel myself to that experience quite regularly if a nap doesn't happen first. Or whether it's the goal of becoming an ordained Unity minister. When I began this journey a number of years ago, I knew I was called to it. I had no earthly idea how it would happen. But I put it into that field of potentiality, and I just held the focus of that idea. It percolates in that field when you just clearly come back to your intention regularly, with your heart, with your spirit, with your intelligence, then it percolates and moves you along in ways you cannot imagine. And I began the knowing that I was called to be a minister. I really had no clue that I'd come to Hawaii for an internship. I didn't know how I'd finish the requirements for a licensed Unity teacher, but I did that back in my church in Bremerton. I really had no idea that I would be called back here after a period of time. I hoped, but I had no idea how that would come to be. But it percolated and drew the experiences into alignment with my desire, with my heartfelt intention, and the focus I held for the idea of becoming a Unity minister brought me here to this church, where we have created an international ministry program. Levitt, Gary, our colleague Deb Knowles on the Big Island, we are classmates in the first group that will become ordained Unity ministers here in our Unity National School. Couldn't have predicted that 8 years ago, not even close. But I knew I had the desire. Now, one interesting thing about desire, sometimes it's much easier to know the experience of what we don't want than to be able to define what we do want. Living in relationship will tell you this is truth. We get to move through life having the experience of contrast as humans, and when we trip over something we don't want, the useful experience there is for it to call us into the knowing of what we do want. For couples that come to see me in therapy, boy, can they tell me the story of everything that's wrong. I've been there myself in my marriage. And a friend who is a therapist sat with my husband and I and said, "Oy vey, all right, I get there's a story about what you don't like, what's not working in your relationship. Can you tell me the story about what will work for both of you? What do you want your relationship to look like?" Took a couple of minutes of silence before either one of us could come up with the beginning of that story. But the success of our relationship occurred when what we wanted, when that story became prevalent for both of us. Because then as we continued to work through the stuff we worked through, one of us would come to a point and say, but yeah, what I want is. And it would remind us both that we were committed to an intention of a whole creative, passionate, amazing relationship, that we were willing to do the work to move forward to that goal. So if you're not sure what you want, catalog what you don't want, and then ask, but what would I rather have? What is it that this information tells me about what my desires are? The next step is to sit with this in meditation. You're surprised that I would recommend meditation as a step for how to follow your intentions. I know. Meditation is the key way that we put ourselves into this field. It's always there, but we have to invite our awareness of it. We have to consciously connect in this field that is the presence and energy and information of God moving in the universe, and we do that through meditation. To move beyond our thoughts into what Deepak Chopra calls the gap, the space between conscious thinking, the silence, we refer to it in unity. To allow that place, that field of percolation where what we intend can give birth to itself and call the energy around in the universe, the creative forces in the universe, to our experience so that we are guided in the next steps. And in the midst of that meditation, when you hold focused, one-pointed attention on this desire, you are placing the energy of your heart and your will and your whole being into this thought. In the midst of that silence, in the place of the gap, to stimulate the movement of God's presence around this idea in your life. Just sit in that quiet and then hold an intention. One of the intentions your ministry team and management team here has been holding about this campus, it's part of our strategic planning, is that we would revitalize all of the beauty that is held in this place. We've been holding that for several months. And sometimes the percolation takes a while. Well, we had the wonderful gift of a young man coming here from Victoria, BC to continue his licensed Unity teacher work, to finish up some of his SEE classes so he can move into his leadership work for a licensed teacher. Jason is a landscape designer. And I asked him, would he be willing to look at a plan, a long-term plan for our grounds, to redesign them utilizing local materials, local plants, and restore this to a magnificently landscaped grounds. Now, I grew up traveling to arboretums with my mother, so I can envision what that beauty would look like. I know nothing about plants. So somebody else has to do this. But, I can walk the grounds with Jason and talk with him about how I want this cleaned up and everything pristine. I can see a curving line here and what kind of plants would fill this space and what kind of lighting. I get some of it, but someone else has to have the knowledge and the expertise to create that. So this energy about beautifying our grounds has been percolating, and in the last week, percolating came to boom! I want you to walk by the fountain today and notice there's water flowing. Jason has been here all this week with the help of another volunteer who's a stonemason that comes on Wednesday evening, Sarah Gray. When you see Jason today, love on this man, because he and Sarah and a few other volunteers have restored the function of the fountain. They've rebuilt the rockwork, and the water is flowing this morning. Yeah, hallelujah. And other generous friends are gifting us the plants to reestablish that beautiful focal point. There is energy moving in the intention we hold in this community. And there is energy moving in each of our lives when we focus on our heart's desire. But that thing we desire most, it does not serve to hold it in a grip in our hands. This release to spirit is a paradoxical spiritual activity. To one, know what we deeply desire, what motivates us, what calls us, what wants to express forth from our soul. And yet, can I stand in that Buddhist idea of detachment? Can I let the results be in God's hands and simply be guided as timing would unfold in divine and uniquely designed for me ways? Rather than gripping it tightly, can I hold my dream, my vision, my intention softly in my hands as if I were holding a baby bird? Just letting it rest there within me, to allow that movement to support it, but that I don't crush it by holding it too tightly. When we release what we desire into the energy of God, that field stirs and percolates and moves in our favor. Because life is this grand universal conspiracy of love. And if we will just get out of the way, I tell myself this all the time, just get out of the way and allow the movement of God to move me effortlessly where I'm headed, where I intend. So know what your heart's desire is. Meditate into the presence, into the silence, to find that gap where what you desire can begin to grow. Focus in the midst of that meditation, one pointedly on your dream. And then seat that so firmly in your consciousness that you can willingly let it go into the thought of God, to be percolating and moving. Rabindranath Tagore is an amazing Indian author and poet. The winds of grace are blowing. It is you who must raise your sails. We are moving in the grace of God in this field of potentiality where nothing is required. There's nothing we have to do but rest in this presence and allow the energy to fill our sails and move us forward. The winds of grace are blowing. Raise your sails. I invite you to join me in that thought, seeking for a moment within to know what you deeply desire. In this moment, find that single point of focus for that one thing. And know that in meditation, you are creating the field of its possibility. And we leave it in God's hands. And all of this we unfold in our hearts and in the heart of God as we meet that energy in the silence.